Welcome to another episode of the Soothing Semantics podcast. I'm your host, Rafi Pinsky. Of course, for all of your real estate needs in South Florida, make sure to follow me at Rafi the Realtor. And don't forget to sign up to the weekly newsletter where you can stay in the know of everything going on in South Florida. So I look forward to getting in touch with you so we can help make your buying, selling, investing, or even leasing dreams come true. Without the further ado, we have a very long-time friend, someone I met during my army service in the IDF, is none other than Ari Abramowitz. I don't have one of those clapping effects. We can easily throw it in there. Whoever's watching that does know you is going to be clapping anyway, so we're good to go.
Amazing, Rafi. Thank you so much for having me on board here.
Absolutely. I just wanted to introduce you a little further. Ari Abramowitz was running an organization called Chayal El Chayal during my service, and I spent many weekends, Shabbatot there. Uh, prior to my service, my friend Michael and I, a childhood friend, we got to Israel a few months prior to drafting, and we didn't have a place to stay. And they had a house. They had a Chayal El Chayal house. Chayal El Chayal means soldier to soldier, and it's an organization that allows lone soldiers to get acclimated, especially if they don't have family in Israel. I happen to have a lot of family in Israel, thank God, but I still needed. I wanted to stay in Jerusalem, and I was looking for an apartment. And thank God, you guys really made our lives a lot easier. So I'm never going to forget that.
Absolutely. I
Absolutely.
will
So
say just one thing on that note, just so you all know, I remember exactly where that was. I was sitting on a couch and I heard you guys didn't have a place to stay. I'm like, Rafi and Michael, you guys got a place right here to stay. You have a place. There's no way you're going to be with us staying on friends' couches. You have a bed. We got a bed for you. You're covered. So I remember that as clear as day.
yeah, it was a huge lifesaver. We had a blast, man. It was great. It just allowed us to stay in Jerusalem where we wanted to. That was our plan of where we were gonna live when we were off base, and it allowed us to actually stay there. Otherwise, I would have had to go to, my aunt or uncle, which would have been nice, but it was all the way in the West Bank. Who knows? Maybe my whole plan would have changed. Maybe I would have stayed there, gotten off base and stayed there. But happy it worked out the way it did. So, ladies and gents, Ari Abramowitz, for the who's of you who don't know, runs an organization called Nevut. Okay, and Nevut essentially means navigation, and it allows for lone soldiers to get along with their daily lives, whether they're in Israel, whether they're in different parts of the country. So it allows for soldiers to get all kinds of help, whether soldiers need gear during reserves, whether soldiers are having trouble finding work if they decide to move back to the United States, if they need mental help, if they have PTSD and need a therapist to speak to. There can be any number of things that a soldier may need, and Navut is there to make sure that they have what they need. They also have different kinds of events, something that I definitely have to be more of a part of, I'll admit. And Ari has been spearheading this, and the lone soldier community, the American lone soldier community, knows Ari quite well. So, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, Rafi. I really appreciate this. And I think one of the most powerful pieces that many people don't know is they ask, I'm back here in the United States right now. Why in the world do you need an organization? Why do you start something for IDF lone soldiers, those without family that go serve from around the world, that go serve in the IDF? Why do they need a support system when they're back here? And you know what the crazy thing is? You know how many, Ralph, I'm curious, and for everyone that's listening, how many U.S. veteran organizations are there in the United States? Do you have any idea?
I imagine a few thousand.
There's 55,000 organizations in the United States that are registered for veteran organizations in the United States, and there's nothing here for IDF veterans, and there's over 1,000 that go every year just from the United States alone, and they're going
Mhm.
back to Israel to be able to be part of their Jewish background, their heritage, to be able to protect the Jewish people, to protect Israel and the land. And when they come back here, there's over 50% are coming back to the States, and they're struggling with PTSD, could be struggling just with the trauma, just with the transition back here, just getting on with life. You were gone, think of your friends, all of our friends, they were in school, they were in college, they're in university, to school, get a job, and now you have all these other people that they pick up, they stop everything they're doing, and now all of a sudden they go to Israel, they do something incredible, and now they come back here, and that transition can be a little challenging. You know, you're a little bit, all of a sudden you're 2, 3 years behind. So if you were someone that went to college or university, you would now be, your friends are already graduating. You're like, wait, I got to start now from step one. Or someone that's not even going to university, but they're going for a job now. They're 22, 23 compared to the other friends are, are a few years younger than them. So it's been a very big challenge that many people didn't even recognize, that there are these incredible young men and women that are going to Israel serving. And this has been since 1948. And it's just crazy to recognize. Again, you went, myself, I went, and it's just been incredible to see how many people pick up and go. But what about when they come back? So that's really part of the mission, what it is. And obviously we'll get into that, but it's just really special to be able to do something here that's unique, that there is nothing that was done for our lone soldiers back here.
Crazy, huh? It's crazy that there's really nothing now. I think since October 7th, there have been a few uh, that are up and coming, maybe, you know.
Yeah, it's again, it's an important need. That's one of the biggest things out there, is people are recognizing the need, and we're also trying to push it out there as well. That there, in every area there should be support groups. There should be that type of need for veterans out here, because it is important, and especially October 7th really was a curveball. Again, just so you understand where it is. Again, I don't know. Everyone has a unique story where they were outside of Israel on October 7th. I'm curious where you were, Rafi, when that happened. Like, where were you were?
I was here in South Florida, and I remember I had some friends that were staying at a hotel, and I went to them, and quite frankly, just gonna tell it like it is. I'm not Shabbat observant, so I use my phone, and most of my buddies that I was hanging out with were. And so when I went to see them, they had no idea. They didn't go to shul that morning. I think they drank the night before. And
We all
so we all did. It was Simchat Torah, so we all drank, right? I'm still very much a part of the holidays. So they had no idea what happened. And as soon as I walked into the hotel, I said, "Guys, did you hear what happened?" They're like, "What? To hear what happened?" I said, "There were over 250 Israeli hostages taken by Hamas. They broke through the border. They killed over 1,000. They were mind blown. They were just blown away. I was like, and we couldn't stop talking about it for hours. I was glued to my phone watching the news. I couldn't stop watching the news. I couldn't believe it was real. It was just insane. Yeah.
I think especially as a soldier, the that way of just, we're, as being a soldier, one of the biggest things that we have is, we're there, we're on the front lines, we're always out there, and just to hear that kind of happening, it doesn't even make sense. It's almost like it was a movie, and that's what it was for me. I was curious how, like, for you as a soldier, what it was like.
Yeah, it was insane. And of course I was thinking about going back. I wasn't signed up for reserves because I didn't make Aliyah when I was in the army, honestly. And it was tough. I really wanted to go back. I had definitely a few hurdles in the way. Just my grandmother had pretty bad dementia. She still does. I'm the only one
You well.
living in Florida. I don't have any family here, so I really had no one to pay my rent. My belongings were just, I had no one to really keep them with. I also I was taking care of my childhood cat who was 17 years old.
Oh wow.
She died not long. She died in January, so it was 2 months after October, the thing happened. So it was tough. I really wanted to, and I'm sure if I would have gone, and I'm sure even if I went now, they would still take me to an extent.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Literally 5 minutes ago, right before we got on this, there's someone that's planning on going back. He's actually out west right now, and he's planning on going back out. Someone that's in Texas right now,
Yeah.
just got back right now. Is their first time going. There's a lot of people. There's just, what's crazy that happened is there's a big need out there. There's thousands of people that are trying to live their life, and they keep on getting called back because the war on terror is so big in Israel. It's really challenging, and I think for myself even, just so you all have a little background in it. So, for me, October 7th, I got called back that day. I've been in the reserve since 2015, even here from the United States. I've been going back and forth to reserves, and I got called by my officer, come back immediately. We need you to just get on a plane. And there were really not many planes going out right then, except for
Hmm.
reservists going. And I told my officer, I said to him, you know, I run an organization where there's thousands of people that are calling us. It was literally on October 7th, people that we never even heard of before reaching out. How do I get back to Israel? If I should go, if I should not go, mental health support, just what's the right thing? We weren't thinking about therapy then. We're thinking about, hey, is it the right decision? Should I go? Should I not go right now? There were a lot of challenges for all these people that served and now they're going and they're all of a sudden going back. Should they go back? And then you had people that their children were in the army at the time. We have a parent support group. And what happened was because of this, it was just we exploded with over 3,000 calls and people reaching out and messages, people just needing advice and support. And as an organization, we started in 2017. So we were actually set up in a positive way to be able to help so many and really grow the organization because we had the infrastructure already beforehand. And I got called up by my officer and I told him I just need a few more weeks. And he said he totally understands that, being in the United States is, one of the only people on the ground here in that kind of aspect of, running an organization like this. They understood that I actually came. It was 3.5 to 4 weeks later I came back. I went to Israel and joined my unit in the north by Lebanon. And that in itself was a crazy experience. There was everything going on in Gaza. That's what everyone was focused on. But the north was pretty intense as well. It was very, very intense. And I'll share the amount of times I went back there and how that experience for us was unfortunately it took I lost 4 teammates and 6 of my teammates were injured out of 20 of us. So it was definitely this was Lebanon. This wasn't Gaza. This was in the north. So I'm happy to share about that also. But it was definitely this war is ongoing. It's a long one. And but as a lone soldier, someone that went back to in the United States and was living here, to get called up on October 7th, I cannot tell you how incredible that was to be able to know, like, you know what, how many thousands of other people just like me and like everyone else was
Mhm,
just like, what can we do? We got to get back there. We got to do whatever it takes. And
mhm,
even people that couldn't go back, what could they do here in the United States, in other countries that they're not going back? And it was amazing to see the mobilization of how many people went to help out the Jewish land, the Jewish people, the Jewish state of Israel right now when they're in a time of crisis. Everyone, it didn't make a difference, Jewish, not Jewish, everyone was there, saw the massacre that happened on October 7th. We could be blindsided all we want, but you just saw what happened. It was the most horrific thing in the 21st century to be able to see a real live massacre, live on social media, live everywhere. And this was a Holocaust that was happening in 2023. This is crazy. And that's something that we can't, we're not, we can't deny that. And unfortunately, there's people that do want to deny these type of things. And you're like, it was live stream. It wasn't anything not like this. This is live. You see what's happening. And it was definitely the most horrific thing to see. And, even myself, I haven't watched 99% of the videos. I didn't want to be able to. I didn't want it to affect me as a soldier and as a person running an organization. Just dealing with so many people. I just said, I gotta be focused on the mission because it does definitely these type of things play games on your mind, and especially when you're a soldier, you gotta be sharp. And so that was actually one of the reasons why I did not watch most of the videos from October 7th and beyond.
right, makes perfect sense. I still want to see that 43-minute clip. I mean, I've said not clip, it's a movie practically. I do want to hear about your story, your experiences in Lebanon. I'm sure everybody listening to this wants to. What are some challenges that when we'll get to that, what are some challenges that, aside from obvious post-traumatic stress that soldiers are having during their service, going into war, right? Seeing death, losing friends' lives, family lives. What are things that Nevut has been doing for soldiers currently serving, or soldiers that
Um,
just
Baruch,
finished?
I'm going to give you a little background for everyone that's hearing, just to be able to understand this mission that I'm on. That'll give like just a little bit of preempt what we're talking about here. As I mentioned, like you're coming back to the States, there's this really challenging transition part. You're coming back, you don't have that support. So when we started the organization, it was like, wait, we need to have that community of support, that we could understand each other. We could understand someone that's been there, been through that we could be able to talk on that same page. And recognizing with that was like these other pillars of mental health and careers. Like you need to be able to, when you come back, you need to be able to have a job, because if you're at home, you know, you can go to all the therapy you want. And this was said by some of the biggest therapists out there. They're like, we love to help with therapy, but more important than therapy is you got to get a job. If you're stuck at home for 120 hours a week, that is bad for you, especially when you're struggling. All these thoughts get to your head. You got to get out there. You got to have a
Mhm.
purpose. You got to be fulfilled every single day. And that's something that's really, really important. People don't recognize. So that was one of the important pieces. Like, you're coming back here, you got to get a job. We got to make sure you have a job, whether it's helping with a resume, helping someone find the job, meet connections,
Let
networking.
me let me ask you something.
Sure.
I find that even soldiers who served during my service, around the time of my service, before we had the current year and a half, however long it is, it's over 600 days at this point.
Yeah,
It's going to be 2 years. We're not far off from that.
not far off at all.
You, I've noticed many soldiers come back from their service and they have a very hard time acclimating. They're not sure what to do, what to get into, college, college, trade school, what kind of job should I pursue? I think for soldiers, no matter what country they serve in, speaking of soldiers in the West at least, right? People I guess we revere and honor. They did something that they value so much. I think for a lot of people, they have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that that may be one of the most exciting things they ever do. Not exciting in the sense where it's always going to be amazing and blissful. Exciting in the sense that it's probably going to be one of the most impactful experiences they have. And so I think a lot of the time they come back and they go, nothing's going to match that. What am I going to get? Some boring corporate job? I feel worthless. And they sit around and they contemplate and they go, ah, this crappy 9 to 5. I got to do this. I think that takes time. I think it does take some time, but that's why when I finished my service personally, I went like right back to college, did my last year right away. It wasn't easy, man. I'll tell you straight up. I went to Brooklyn College and I was walking around the campus. It wasn't easy for me to it took a couple of months before I kind of settled down. I was still very my mind was still moving in circles and I was always scanning the area when I walked around. I wasn't
You're
calm.
you're sitting in a restaurant. Your back is to your face is to the front door, watching
It
who's
was
coming in there.
everything was just super methodical and crazy. And I was like, dude, you're in a college campus. You're in class right now. Relax. I still had like my buzz cut up. I was wearing my army t-shirt and I was like, ugh. And the teacher's writing things on the board, and I'm like, in my head, scenarios are playing.
So I'm going to tell you something on that that's, I think, really important
Yeah.
for us to understand is, what does Nevut mean? Nevut means to navigate. In life, in the military, how do you navigate? You navigate with a map. You have a map, you see where you're going, point A to point B, you got that, and you go, you navigate. In life, you got to do the same thing. You got to navigate. But how do you do that for a veteran? It's for anyone, really. You need a map as well. But what does that map stand for? MAP stands for meaning and purpose. Every single veteran that comes out. Yesterday, I was doing one of the most fulfilling, meaningful things in my life, doing something that's making a difference. I know I'm literally saving lives here. And now all of a sudden I'm going back to the United States. I'm going back to my home country. I'm a regular civilian right now. No one even notices. I'm just back in the regular day to day of the grind of things, and I'm trying to, I'm trying to figure out what to do, or I'm coming in all macho gung ho of like, I got this, and all of a sudden it's not so easy. Not everyone's hiring. The jobs you thought that were going to happen, you thought you're going to make the big money, you thought this is going to work out, doesn't work out so simple. And all of a sudden you're like, what's going on over here? And at the same time, as someone that was a lone soldier, someone that came from outside of Israel, their friends are still in the military, still serving. And so they see what's going on. There's WhatsApp chats you have of your group, or you have other groups that you're on, and you see they're still there. They're still doing all this meaningful stuff. And here you are. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm starting college in 2 months from now, or I'm trying to find a job over here. You're like,
Mm.
it was just so much easier there. There's room. There you have a place to sleep there. You have food. You have a structure every day. It's that much easier. Now I'm going to civilian life. I don't have any of that. And this is such a big challenge for all these veterans. And I'm going to tell you one thing that's even more challenging. People don't realize with this war, we're talking about another Vietnam here. What happened in Vietnam was how many veterans came back from the US military, came back to the United States, and they were shunned, looked down upon. Here in the United States right now, if you served in the IDF, you're getting people that are coming to you rioting at your front door. You're getting people, you can't tell it out in the open. You can't go out there and tell people that you served in the IDF. I'm gonna go back into what you said about Lebanon. I just want to bring up one more thing that was what threw me off so much from this war. So just so you understand this, I'm someone that I'm a reservist, and I live in the United States, run an organization that, me and my wife founded here in 2017. And at the same time, we thank God have a wife and children. And I go back and forth every year for reserves. And this war happens. Now, this war is much more intense in a lot of ways than things that happened beforehand. And in a lot of areas, different times that we've ever experienced. But this was already in 1 year, going back for me 3 times. Every time I would stay because I know I don't have the extra time to be able to just relax and be able to kind of get back, acclimate back into civilian life. The second I finish reserves or I have my flight back home, I wait till the last minute, get my equipment back in, my uniform, my gun, my weapon, everything back in. And I'm on a plane a few hours later. And by the time I get back, it's a midnight flight, 1 in the morning. I get back to the United States. 6 in the morning, I land. 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, I'm taking my kids to school. And it's not even 24 hours before I was in the middle of a war zone. And here I am totally disconnected from everything. You know how crazy that is?
It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. You were just in a war zone in Lebanon. You were just in Lebanon in a war zone with your gear, and now you're taking your kids to school.
But even more than that is all of a sudden when you have, during the war, you see all these drones that are flying over from Lebanon, and you never know when they're gonna crash on you, or they're a suicide drone or they're intelligence drone. This is before September, before the pager attack that Israel did on Hezbollah. And you see these drones. It's literally like, and they're high up there. You don't know if they're coming down, if they're going after you, what they're gathering, what they're not. And
You knew they were Hezbollah drones and not Israeli drones?
100%, yeah, you knew clearly they were 100% Hezbollah because they were coming in from Hezbollah into Israel, and you know exactly which ones they were. Coming back to the United States, my biggest challenge was we had an event for our organization for Nevut, and we're on a rooftop having a nice event, and there's this is in New York City, and you see from LaGuardia, JFK, you see Newark. It was so challenging. That alone, I was like, "Whoa, my gosh! Like this is just overstimulating back there." I literally got back a few weeks before, and then even more than that was, if you remember, in this past fall in New York, New Jersey, there was these drone sightings, and they're like, "Hey, there was reports that could be from Iran or other things, whatever it was, even if it was or wasn't." I saw those drones. I'm like, no one knows what it is, and you're coming from a war zone, and you see this happening. Drives your head, your alert status, everything just goes right back to that war zone. You try to stay out of it. And I wrote to other soldiers, this is what we have in the organization. We have a buddy program called the Tsemet program. In the Army, you have a Tsemet. You have a partner with you. You're always part of it. And one of my buddies I called, I said to him, hey, it's 1 in the morning. I said, I just saw a few drones. I'm like, it's just bugging me out. I'm fine, but I just need to tell you about it because I just need to get it off my chest. And it was just like, it goes right back into that zone. And it was just such a challenging piece. And you know how many of these other people that are here in the United States right now struggle with that. We actually had this week, we had someone that came back from Israel and they heard a bang in the middle of the night. And they tried finding a bomb shelter. They were like, wait, they're back in the United States right now. There's no bomb shelter here. It's a real challenge going from war back to civilian life. And whatever anyone wants to say that, hey, they should be good, and there's this false idea that people have. Yeah, this guy's tough. He's macho. He's able to handle it. And I spoke to someone. I said, like, hey, I love to be able to tell the organization, if anyone, just to know about Nevut in your community, because it's important. You have a lot of lone soldiers there. I want people to know. And they're like, no, these guys are good. I'm like, these guys are good. They're like, yeah, they should be good. They're back on life. I'm like, you have no idea what war is. I'm sorry. You have no idea what it's like coming back from a war zone back to the United States. You have no clue. And to say that they're fine, you know how many people are suffering, and anyone that lost friends or lost teammates or stuff like that, And if we have a minute or two, I'd share about my teammates, what happened with them.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
So it's actually interesting how my unit is. We're a very active unit. We're part of the Golani Brigade, their reserve. So it's called Carmeli. And we've been active October 7th. We were called up to the north. We were called right then to be able to go and make sure that there was a defensive line on the north of Israel. Everyone was focused on the south, and they were worried the exact thing that happened in the south with Hamas. Hezbollah, the elite Red One unit of Hezbollah, was going to come and literally do this idea of conquering the whole northern Israel. So right away they sent thousands, hundreds of thousands of soldiers right back up to the north of Israel. And you're talking about there were thousands of soldiers and trees and bushes everywhere, just literally making a defensive perimeter around the whole entire Israel because they were really worried about this idea of Hezbollah invading into the north of Israel. So we were there for for 3 months straight. They gave us off for a little bit till
What was
February.
that like, by the way? What was that like, Ari? You walked around and just saw soldiers standing like all over different areas?
So I'll tell you a little bit that was interesting about this.
Just give me a bit of a visual because I think people I don't before we skip over that.
Okay, perfect. So the audience really gets understanding of this. The north of Israel, for a good 10, 15 miles from the border between Israel and Lebanon, was completely a closed military zone. No civilians were able to go there. There were over 80,000 families that were evacuated from the north of Israel. Now, as an organization, just so you know this, because this is what happened before I went actually into the reserves. As an organization, on October 7th, we sent back over 200 lone soldiers from our organization itself back to Israel, made sure that they were okay, they had gear, they had what they needed. And then we realized like one of our biggest things is that piece of support for them, this community of support, the well-being, the mental health, that piece that's so important. We said we got to go visit our lone soldiers on the front lines. So we actually went before I went back to reserves. I actually visited my team in the north. This was in the 2.5 weeks into the war. I went back. I went to Israel, visited all our soldiers from the north, the south, all the way through the center of Israel, the Judea and Samaria. We were all over. In 3 days, we covered over 80 different bases. It was insane, barely any sleep. And what we got when we got to the north of Israel was this incredible sight that you saw was every single block. And I'm talking about block as in a half a mile. There were just in every like little place of bushes, you had more and more tanks. You had what's called personnel carriers. You had soldiers there. You had bases. It was just packed in every area, bushes, under tents, makeshift tents. They were really terrified that Hezbollah was going to come and invade. And it was a real miracle that Hezbollah didn't invade. And people don't know this. When everyone was called up on October 7th, my officer said to us 2 weeks later, he said, you know what one of the biggest miracles is? That didn't invade from the north. You know why? Our guns didn't even work. We didn't have time to zero in our weapons. Everyone knows whoever goes shooting, you got to zero in your weapon. They were so worried about that they were going to come in right away. They gave soldiers weapons. It shoots, it works, but you got to just go to the front line. And could you imagine that? You have thousands of soldiers with weapons that weren't zeroed in, and that they didn't attack them. They didn't know that Israel was so vulnerable, and that they didn't jump in was probably one of the greatest miracles of this war. And it took a big toll on everyone out there, the soldiers, because they were there for months. Remember, October in Israel, the seasons are October, November time. It starts the rainy season. The amount of mud out there, soldiers sleeping out in the cold. But this is a nation where the Jewish people are such a strong nation. I can't tell you enough how many people came with that have families, that have everything else. They dropped everything to be able to go and stay in the mud, stay within just getting soaking wet, not having proper equipment, whatever it was, be able to protect the Jewish people, to be able to protect their families. And that was what was so incredible about seeing this war, was being able to be there and see how much people gave just to be able to make sure they could defend their family and their neighbors and the land of Israel. And that was something that was spectacular to see. But that was the first step, or the first stage of the war. It was very intense, very challenging, not knowing if Hezbollah was going to come into Israel. And the other thing that people should just really understand is Hezbollah is a terror organization, and the challenging part about them is they have a lot of tunnels, and they had a lot of tunnels, unfortunately. And that was the reason why It wasn't a simple thing of, okay, yeah, we could just stand there. It was wherever you were, if they were able to see a soldier somewhere or a civilian, they would shoot a cornet missile and soldiers would get killed, civilians would get killed, and they didn't care. And it
Mhm.
was a very dangerous time to be there because you could think for a second, I could put down my guard. If you put down your guard for 1 second, there was a cornet coming your way. It was crazy like that. And cars, there were signs on the road for cars that were allowed to go there. You had to go over a certain speed because a cornet missile could come after a civilian out of a car, out of a vehicle, out of a tank. It was
So
just
what was the
crazy, man.
speed? What was the speed that they required?
I think it was over like it was almost like roughly like 40 to 50 miles an hour you had to go on these
Mhm.
roads. It was very you couldn't go slow there. And it was like it was very nerve-wracking to be up there for a lot of the people when I came with our group as well. Like, just going up on the north, you see Lebanon, you don't know. We didn't invade yet. So it was a very different piece. And again, we were there. Our unit was called back, as I mentioned, through February. And then we got back again. We were there from February, March, April in the north by Lebanon. And right then was Passover. So just so everyone knows, it's 2024 right now. And I went back to the United States at that point. Again, I was there for short stints myself because of the organization, my family. So I went in the end of February, March time I went, and then we were called back to go. We were supposed to get off. Everyone was supposed to be able to go home. They called us back and said, no, Iran is about to shoot ballistic missiles. And so all of a sudden they canceled everyone. Last year Passover, everyone was canceled of like getting off. Everyone has to be ready in case the war escalates with Iran. And then what craziness happened was they're like, you know what, you guys are supposed to be getting off now for till the end of this, till the summer when there might be a war with Lebanon. Nope, we need you guys in Gaza. And they called my unit back and a bunch of other units to go into Gaza now. So there was no time to relax even. It was everyone went straight
Mhm.
from Lebanon to Gaza. And
Right.
for me, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go back that time because of family responsibility in the United States as well as the organization, which was such a critical piece in this war as well, that we're able to do so much to help with these soldiers. And I can't abandon an organization that really thousands of soldiers are relying on. So this was coming back after we went into Gaza, then we got off for a little bit. Again, there was a lot that happened in Gaza as well, with our units being able to uncover a lot of terror infrastructure there. Thank God everyone was safe, just a few little light injuries. And then the pager attack, September. And it just, for everyone understands this, we have this amazing organization here in the United States, Nevut, which is a community for the soldiers. So I knew right away, I told my officer right when the pager attack happened, I said, I know we're getting called to go into Lebanon now. This is the beginning of going into Lebanon. And so I said to him, we have Rosh Hashanah, the new year, and we're having a big program for lone soldiers that are coming. People are coming in from Florida, from California, right, Colorado. People, lone soldiers, were coming in for a big event. And I said, also the last days of the holiday of Sukkot, which is the big one of the three big holidays in the Jewish calendar every year, which fell out with October 7th the first time on October 7th, Simchat Torah. So we were doing a big program then as well. So I said I would come the week after that. So it was on a Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday Shabbat was the last days of Simchat Torah. My officer told me, you know what, when that's done, you could come. You could come back and join the team. My unit was called to go to a place called Jabal Blat. That is what is right on the border of Lebanon and Israel. Right, literally not far in at all. There's a lot of mountaintops, and there's a lot of the challenging part about Lebanon is it's very mountainous. And so there's a lot of houses that are all along the border. And Hezbollah would just fill these houses with cornet missiles, with underground terror infrastructures and tunnels, and every backyard houses were all filled with terrorists and people that had terror equipment and be able to use and weapons. So now the IDF's job was, we're going to do a very intense job of clearing out all the way to the Litani River of Hezbollah. We have to get them
Mhm.
away back to where the UN resolution was, to be able to get them back behind the Litani River. That's where our goal is.
Mhm.
And so we were on the mountain, and my team was on the mountain of Jabal Blat again. I'm in New York at the time, running this program for our soldiers, and it was the Thursday morning. We were having a meal, and one of the soldiers comes over to me and says, "Ari, which unit are you?" And I said, "I'm in Carmeli." And he says, you know, there's 2 to 4,000 soldiers in this unit, maybe even 5,000. It's a massive unit that we're part of. And he said to me there were 4 soldiers that were killed, 6 injured. I'm like, okay, like I was right away thinking of, you know, like this type of thing is there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of people, there's thousands of people. Maybe I would know of a lone soldier. I hope it wasn't a lone soldier that would know. And he shows me a picture. He takes out his phone and shows me a picture. I look at the picture and I'm like, no way, that can't be. Like, these are my guys. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And the problem was, it's called the holiday, and you know I don't use my phone then and stuff like that, so I had no idea know what happened to the rest of my team. And again, this is my team I was with for the past 10 years, and not to know what happened to the other injured. I knew 6 were injured. It was definitely one of the most challenging experiences of my life, being far away. And you know, it's crazy because you know I wasn't even there by that, and I wasn't there by the incident, but I was with them during this war, and to not be there with them when this happened, and you have no idea what's going on, and there was a funerals for them. I had no idea anything. I only found out Saturday night, so it's 2 or 3 days later, like, you know, what was going on. But even my teammates that I would speak to, the person that my commander that I would usually call to speak to about going back, he was killed. He was a lone soldier from New York. He was my commander. And my wife spoke to him right in the beginning of the war. We had a conversation with him about me going back to the war at that point. And his name was Sami Harari from Brooklyn. Great guy. And he was my point person always. And now here he was killed, and I was like, you know, the rest of the team, I had no one to even call about this because that's my teammate of 20 people, and now half the team's gone. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just it was such a challenging moment, I would say, that I can't even explain. Like they say there's like secondary PTSD or stuff like that. Or again, I'm not saying it was PTSD, but trauma. I was like, it was really a tough bunch of months after that of just internally of like just thinking like these are your guys, these are your teammates you're so close with. But the most amazing thing that I'll say from this was, as an organization, this is what we do. We're here to help out. You know, we're here to help out each other. The amount
Mm-hmm.
of calls and support and soldiers reaching out to me say, Ari, you go and help us all out. I'm taking you out. I'm like, no, I'm good. They're like, no, we're taking you out to go play pool together. We're doing something else. And I was like, crazy. It was amazing. Like to be able to
Mm-hmm.
see what you give to others and how it reciprocated back to myself when I was struggling with this. And
Mm-hmm.
I just say like I went back just now again. I got back. I went again in February. We called back, and I was like, you know what? We got to go back there because you know just be able to be with my team again. There were no flights after on when my teammates were killed. There were no flights because it was not possible to get a flight to Israel at that point. It was right after the holiday. The flights were $6,000 each one, and they were totally booked. And I was like, you know what, my whole team was disbanded after that till we got called back again in February just now. So I got to go back there, be able to be with my other teammates that are, thank God, still alive, and got to visit the other ones that were injured. You know, that did some healing as well. Be able to visit others at their, you know, at their gravesite. But definitely, this war was just something that I'm one person. I go to therapy every week, and I do that. And this is what our organization, we have partnerships and we help out. We have case managers that help with therapy and these other things. And I'm like, if I'm dealing with this and I have therapy every week for three years already, I'm going to therapy. How much are other people struggling that aren't? And I'll tell you the amount of people, Rafi, just people don't realize we got calls of people like wanting to commit suicide after this war that were in the war, that were back here, that are really struggling in the United States. People have no idea, no clue. And it's our job, everyone that's listening, it's our job to make sure that we're there for them. You know, someone that was serving, don't think it's all okay. Go take them out, go out with them for a drink, go out with them, just make sure they're okay, be in contact with them. This is what Nevut was about, is to be able to make it into a ideology. We got to be here for those that give in everything. These are heroes. And even if you didn't serve in this war, we are still heroes. You've given up your life. You put your life on the line to be able to defend the Jewish people. We got to be here for you. We got to thank you. We got to stand up for you and give you what it takes. And if it's a friendship, if it's a beer, if it's a job, if it's someone just needs someone to talk to, that's all of our responsibilities.
Beautiful. Wow. That's so special.
Yeah, thank you for being able to have this and share. I love being able to share about my teammates. It's
I have
just
so
sharing the
many. I
memory.
want to talk. I have so many things to talk to you about, man. If we were sitting on a couch right now, I feel like we'd end up talking till 3 in the morning. I'm telling you. I know nobody's gonna have the attention span to listen that long, but I would, meaning I would be sitting there on the couch just talking to you.
Got to do a
Uh,
part two.
I'm down. I'm down. I do want to. I mean, what's the story now with Lebanon? Is how far in is the IDF? Because I don't hear nearly as much coverage about Lebanon. Everything's about Gaza now. Um, how many soldiers approximately are inside of Lebanon? How far into Lebanon are they? What's the
So-
story with Hezbollah? Are they dealing with heavy Hezbollah fighting? Is it relatively quiet? What are you hearing on the ground?
Okay, so just an interesting thing just to say, and I say this just so everyone really understands. Every soldier that's out there, we really have no clue what's going on. We have no idea what's going on in the sense of what they say in the army is you have a gimel, gvul gezra, which means you have your boundary. We want you to focus on this area, and it's an important piece for anyone that understands military. You don't need all the soldiers knowing everything that's going on because, God forbid, if you have October 7th that happens, and they had this by the Yom Kippur War, where there were soldiers that were taken in by Syria and they were interrogated in Egypt as well. They don't want everyone knowing exactly what's going on. And to the extent of the pager attack, no one had any idea where that up to the highest levels in the Mossad, into the prime minister's office, no one knew about this. This was top secret. And I think for us, just to know as a civilians what's going on, or whatever, even soldiers on the basic level, there's basic levels of things we see. Israel, I could say it like this: they did a phenomenal job in Lebanon. I think before what they did was really came with a great strategy to be able to really push Hezbollah away from Israel's border. And
Mm,
what that means is making sure that there are all these structures that were built up beforehand, they have to all be destroyed. You can't have anything right near the border anymore. That's too close for comfort. The problem really happened though was that we see is politics getting in the way when all of a sudden other countries are saying, well, you can only make a buffer zone of X, Y, and Z. You can only make it up to a few 100 feet. You can only have Israel has to pull back out. Israel had some strategic mountaintops in Lebanon, and they had to leave from them. And those strategic mountaintops that they left are really a shame because that's really what gives them such a big area to be able to see what's going on. So now they have 5 spots that are in Lebanon that are not deep inside Lebanon at all. They're right on the border, but it gives them a much better area to see what's going on if people are approaching and
mm,
all that. But the challenging part is again, it's ideology. You're fighting against the ideology, people without uniforms that are there. So you're not seeing soldiers there. You're seeing people with civilians on motorbikes, on other things like that. But you know that they're the enemy. You know they're looking out where the soldiers are, what's going on, what's
mm,
infrastructure. And that's really the challenging part you have is you're in this place where politics get in the way. And I would say Israel was this close to being able to really finish the job in Lebanon in such a great way. And again, politics get in the way. They had to stop certain things, they had to pull out. But
what would they have done? How could they have finished it?
they had more to do. Meaning they had more to conquer before they had more to conquer and hold and really clear out before the deadline that they had that the United States gave them. They had to pull out at a certain time if they were able to keep some strategic areas that were again, it wasn't you're talking about 10, 20, 30 miles into Lebanon. You're talking about a mile in, a half a mile in. You still even see those places from Lebanon, from Israel, but they're much more strategic where it just gives Israel a place where they could have the high ground. It's the same thing as the Golan Heights,
Right.
just so people
Totally
understand.
get it.
The Golan Heights is so important for Israel's strategic area. We need that also in Lebanon as well.
Right.
So there's definitely on the ground right now. Israel's there. It's not that there's intense fighting right now. It's pretty quiet there. I would say the difference between now and before September, this past September, before February, I would say, literally right before they pulled out, if you were seen, there was a cornet coming your way. Israel did a phenomenal job to be able to, thank God, get it that they were able to really clear out the threat. So now you could stand out. You got to be careful, obviously, but you could be exposed more. Before that, you couldn't even be exposed. Like, anyone that's with a weapon there's drones, there's other thing to make sure that protecting as well. The soldiers out there, they're much more alert, but it's not as, I would say that it went down a step from where the intensity was September before that.
Have the Hezbollah supporting civilians in the south largely they all came back? They're all living
To
in
where the buffer zone is, where we're able to see with our own eyes, no one's able to come back there. There's no structures there anymore.
everything's
They had
destroyed, you're saying?
Yeah, they destroyed everything to make sure there's no terror infrastructure there, and be able to really remove that so that they don't start building up again and having Hezbollah right on Israel's doorsteps.
Okay, and is Israel planning on controlling that for the foreseeable future? Do they have the point where they're thinking of letting go of it, or they're just going to stay there? Do
From
they
what
have
I
an idea?
understand right now, for the foreseeable future, they're staying there, and I really hope for Israel's own sake and safety that they do stay there. It's such a strategic, important spot,
Mhm.
and we need these strategic spots to be able to protect against terror, and
Well,
that people feel they can go back home in the north.
here's what I'm also going to say. I think it's a very important strategy when you have an enemy trying to annihilate you to take land when you defeat them, because it decentivize a word? Unincentivize, decentivize, whichever, them to continue to attack when they know you're going to take land. This is the way it is. And they don't care about losing their own civilians. There are things they're willing to sacrifice, but when it comes to losing land, that's something that's going to hurt them badly. So
Correct.
in God, that's why I've been saying on every podcast I've been recording for the last several years since I've started this podcast practically, I said that we should take the entirety of Gaza. Whether Gazans stay in there or not is a different story, but in terms of Israel having complete ownership of the entire thing, must be and it has to be now, because this is an opportunity we may not get until God forbid there's another war like this. And hopefully this will be our opportunity to stop that from happening.
Yeah,
Because
and I
if we
think
don't take
Defense
it,
Minister Katz said that as well. He said that, he said about that after that it's an important piece, because they don't different for them, the difference between terrorism and Western civilization, which is really important to understand, that life for the Jewish people in Israel matters tremendously. Saving one life is saving the world. That's what it says in the Torah. It's a piece of Judaism that's very, very important for us. So for us, every life matters, and they know that. For them, a big victory is when they kill terrorism. For terrorists, the big victory is every time they kill a soldier. For
Mhm.
them, when they're getting killed over there, when we're killing terrorists, they don't care about that. For them, they feel good about it. The second you talk about land, oh wait, all of a sudden that's something that they don't stand for, and that's exactly what you're saying, and that's what the Israel's dealing with right now, which is interesting. And obviously we'll see what happens with that, but again, definitely in Lebanon, you see that clearly, but it's strategic points that are needed, and even it's critical.
Absolutely, absolutely, it's tough, but it seems like we're finally doing the right thing. Because man, growing up, I grew up a very proud Zionist. I mean, my grandmother who raised me was a huge pro-Israel advocate. She was the biggest Jew, and we would always get frustrated on how the Israeli government would always backtrack. Every time we had our enemy on their knees, we would put our hand out and let them stand up again. All the time, over and over and over and over and over. And we've done it many times throughout this war, even. But this is the first time in my life, and I'm only 31, but it's the first time in my life where I've seen Israel wage war, right? Fight a war against multiple enemies, and actually continue with the initial. And the plans, to some degree, have changed. I think they were the same all along, whether the hostages were a priority or whether defeating Hamas was the priority. It's all semantics. The truth is objective victory is going to always be the most important thing. And if we're not willing to acknowledge that, we're never going to win. So I hopefully please, if there's something else you want to say, I would love to have it said. So
Yeah, I
before
just
I
think
wrap
the
it up,
final thing for the audience on my end for tonight, again, is just this was really, first of all, Rafi, this was phenomenal. I love being able to, hear from others, as well as being able to share. But I think one thing that everyone should know that we're, with all the challenges that Israel's facing, we're also living in a time of miracles. I can't say this enough for people to be able to see how many things happen with even with Syria, with being able to recognize, obviously there's a country, Iran, that shot hundreds of missiles at Israel, ballistic missiles, and you saw the damage that there was barely any damage. Like you saw the pager attack. Again, obviously we lose life and it's painful and those things like that. And the war, how many people we lost. But what the biggest thing that this whole war brought together, and everyone could say the opposite because they read the news and everything else, the unity it brought. It didn't make a difference if someone's religious, not religious. You're in the trenches, you're in the foxholes together with people for months at a time in the mud. And this is not in the First World War, Second World War, Vietnam. This is 2023, 2024, 2025 we're
yeah,
talking about. And here we are, and we're together. And this brings everything together. And as an organization, one of the biggest pieces is community, because when you have community, you got unity and you have everything that comes with it. And that's so important. And that's my thing that I want to give everyone is we're stronger than ever. We really are as a nation. We're really proud of it. Again, there's a lot of news that goes around negative, and I am so positive that if we continue in the right way and be able to continue going with this sense of unity, that we have a responsibility for each other, we are going to not only win this war, we're going to have such a bright future for our children, great grandchildren.
beautiful, beautiful. I love it, man. I
Yeah,
love
thank
it.
you.
It's amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this phenomenal episode on the Soothing Semantics podcast, episode 222, I believe. We got some sods. We got some sods. So we got some sods saved. Pardon my my awkward loss of sentence of vocabulary, man. I'm a little tired. So Ari, thank you so much. Guys, make sure to check out Nevut. If you are a lone soldier, check out Nevut. If you are thinking about joining as a lone soldier, check out Nevut. If you are whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, and you'd like to donate to Nevut, you'd like to become a sponsor, make sure to check them out. You can go to nevut.org, I believe. That's
Yep.
all that it takes, and get connected. There's so many wonderful things you can do to be a part of the movement. So thank you, Ari. Be safe if you are going back to serve soon. Please be safe.
Thank you.
And God willing, God willing. I mean, I don't want to make any promises, but I hope that sometime in the near future I can go back for some time myself.
Amazing.
And ladies and gents, again, like, subscribe, share, leave your comments. Real Estate Needs, Rafi the Realtor. Check it out. Give it a follow. You can also buy me a coffee. That would be wonderful if you'd like to support this podcast. It can be $5. It could be a monthly sponsorship. Whatever you feel is fair. Thank you again for watching. It has been a wrap. Peace.